Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and I've got a very happy, very delighted, very excited Sonny Verma from Locked On Illini with me here. Sonny, I would ask how you're doing tonight, but I know you're doing so well. What's this Illinois win over Purdue feel like tonight?
I don't know what you're talking about. Comfortable 8-point victory over Purdue. It's a kind of a no doubter. No, I mean, I don't know about you, JR. Like you're obviously a neutral party, but I just got done on the post game of this Locked On Illini, and I talked about how with these two teams and the way the history has gone over the last 5-6 years and the atmosphere today, it really did feel like it was a preview of March. And
Mm-hmm.
it's my favorite time of the year. I watch sports all day, every day, but nothing to me touches the excitement of March Madness. And I think we kind of got a glimpse of that today. It was a victory I'm sure we're going to talk about, which I was extremely impressed by the Illini. I, at multiple points in that game, had very little faith that they'd be able to make that comeback. They were down double digits with, I believe, 10 minutes left in this game. I was already thinking about the sad script I was going to have to go with in my post game session, and yet this team just kept battling. And they took the lead, and what happens just a couple minutes later? They're down 4 again. And like, oh, I've seen this story before. They made a run, couldn't withstand it, and then they lose the game. No, they didn't. They came back again, and again, I think I'll expand on it later, but this is the exact type of win that this Illinois team needed, and almost in the perfect time and situation.
For sure, for sure. We're going to break down the entire game here in just a moment. We'll talk both sides. We'll talk Illinois. This won't be an Illinois-centric show, but obviously there will be a lot of Illinois talk. It is a big win for the Illini. We'll also talk about Purdue, maybe where do they go from here, kind of what's the thought process of this team right now, or what maybe should be the thought process. I'm not going to tell the fans what they're thinking. They all think it themselves. But we do want to remind you, Big Ten After Dark, we're going to be coming to you live every single night for the rest of the college basketball season with Big Ten content for you. Tomorrow night, it'll be at least me, maybe have somebody else with me. Sunday night, we're going to be breaking down the Big Ten basketball bracket, the tournament, everything going on there. Make some bracket predictions. Not that they ever come true anyway, but you know what? It's March. You got to make some predictions. You got to fill out a bracket, even if it's a Big Ten bracket. So we're going to do that. And then, of course, we'll talk NCAA tournament, all that stuff. It's going to be a fantastic time. Monday night, I am excited though because I will have Jason Carmelo back on with me again to do some Big Ten bracketology. So if you're wondering, where does the Illini sit after this? Maybe if you're a Purdue fan, where does Purdue sit? What's going on with the Big Ten bubble teams? All that stuff. It'll be bracketology centric on Monday night with Jason Carmelo. All right, Sonny, we've made him wait long enough. Let's talk about it. Illinois 88, Purdue 80 in this game. Fantastic win for the Illini. This was a game that started off hot for Illinois, but then Purdue responded. They found themselves with a good lead there for most of the game. Illinois came storming back to get the lead cut to 2 around halftime, or when halftime was going on, because Will Riley hit that buzzer beater for, well, maybe a buzzer beater. Anyway, the clock expired. That weird rule at halftime where it just keeps going. But and then Illinois, they kind of fell away, and then to end the game in the last 2 minutes of the game, Illinois goes on a 13-1 run. Felt similar to maybe what we've seen happen to Illinois at points this season, but this
Exactly.
time it was Illinois coming in clutch late in the game. I mean, what do you attribute this to, right, Sonny? Like, what do you attribute this late game surge? What do you attribute this game to? Because this was a game that, for parts of it, it looked like Illinois wasn't going to win, but then they found their 3-point shooting late. What do you make of this win?
JR, I'm going to sound a little romantic here, but I've got an Illinois shirt on and a Locked On Illini cap. So, bear with me for a second. But I talked about this in the post-game show of Locked On Illini. For me, it really was when Kasparis made that three at the end, when, Ben Humrickhouse made his three-pointer with, I think, like 4 or 5 minutes left. Every single person who watched them shoot those shots was like, no, you're doing such a good job attacking the rim, getting those inside buckets. Purdue can't stop you. Why are you taking those 3-point shots? And they went in. And all I can think about was, I really think that Brad Underwood As stubborn as he has been all season long, the threes have not been falling, and yet Brad has never changed his mindset and saying, no, if they're open, I want them to shoot them. They're good 3-point shots. As long as they're good 3-point shots, they're good 3-point shooters. I want them to shoot them. And I really think all I can think about were those type of moments. Like, this is kind of what he was building this team towards. It doesn't, sure, it's a bummer losing a game in mid-December because you didn't change your strategy. And I'm not saying that in itself is a good thing, but I do think Brad was kind of thinking big picture. And he knows, look, the light doesn't get brighter than what it looks like in March. And, a game like tonight, the season finale for the Illini, the regular season finale, you're playing a team that you haven't beaten 5 times in a row. They've absolutely had your number. Those shots were very tense shots. And again, shots that if you polled Illini fans, we probably wish they wouldn't take, because Spurs was 2 for 9 going into that shot. Yet he took it without hesitation. And, it proved to ultimately be the dagger. And so really it's just, I guess to answer your question, I'm being kind of long-winded. I feel like Brad's been romanticizing, talking about the type of team that he will have in March. He's like, just wait till everyone gets healthy. No, these 3-pointers, even though it was driving us crazy, you, myself, and other actual Illinois fans, this is why. He doesn't want them to lose their confidence, because when they're open, he wants them to shoot, because if you beat rivals this way, and it's just, I don't know. I keep rambling. I apologize.
No, you're fine. To me, the most impressive part, obviously, the 3-point shooting and stuff like that, everything you mentioned, which, by the way, Locked On Illini listeners will get this because you've mentioned it before, but I don't think Ben Hummerkaus is going to church saying people don't like him anymore. He's going to church. People like him there, okay? That's an inside story, Ben Hummerkaus. Listen to Locked On Illini if you want to know the inside story there. But anyway, I got to be honest. I was more impressed with the Illinois defense at the end of the game more than I was the offense. The offense, they were starting to hit threes up until that moment, right? I think it was Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn that shot a 3 off in a Visic double team, and I was like, oh my gosh, they just don't have it. Like, they don't have the 3-point shooting today. Why didn't DGL cut there? And then it was like after that, they just started hitting threes, and I was like, okay, well, I'm glad I didn't tweet that out. I look pretty stupid if I said that at this point, but as far as I'm concerned, the strip by Will Riley there at the end of the game, off the pick and roll to Trey Coffin, Kylan Boswell, dude, he was in all sorts of trouble all night with the screening and everything they were doing. But then finally, he was getting around those screens. I don't know if it was fatigue of Purdue or what it was, but he just found a way to start getting around some of those screens at the top of the key on Braden Smith that just made Braden Smith hesitate that one extra second he needed. And also, Braden Smith started having some errant passes there at the end. Now, you're not going to find much Braden Smith slander from me tonight. The dude almost had a triple-double, okay? And I went over to the Purdue message boards for a little bit just to kind of get a taste of what's going on over there, and there were people blaming Braden Smith, and I'm like, guys, you can't blame Braden Smith here. You cannot blame Braden Smith in this game. Did he have a few errant passes? Sure. Did he go 2 for 9 from 3? Sure. But the dude was absolutely electric all game. His quickness, everything he was bringing to the table. Really, it was Kylan Boswell getting the defense at the end of the game. Like I said, Will Riley, that steal that led to the Kasparis Jaconas 3. I mean, just talk about this defense here for a second, Sonny. Like, this defense is what this team needed late in the game to pull away, because they were scoring with Purdue. They were doing just fine scoring. It was the defense that needed to make its resurgence, and it did.
Purdue in that first half was scoring 1.23 points per possession. Illinois was doing just fine offensively in that first half, but Purdue, they just could not stop Purdue from scoring. And Purdue's been on fire as of late on the offensive end in their last couple of victories. So it looked like it was going to be one of the same old. Illinois was going to be tasked by, they had to outscore Purdue. But as you said, I really like Kylan Boswell in that second half. I think he made a lot of adjustments himself. It's funny, all season long, hand up, I've been saying I can't wait to put Braden Smith on Boswell Island. I watched that first half, and at halftime, I was like, well, that was one of the dumbest things I've ever said in my life, because Braden Smith was just running circles around. Like, it was a simple matter of he decided where he wanted to shoot the shot or which guy he wanted to pass it to, and it was an easy bucket every single time. And I was venting in our Locked On Illini Discord. I was like, we've had 5 days to prepare for this. What's the game plan? But in that second half, Kylan, I think, did a really good job, not just bothering Braden. It's just one of those things where Kylan's so big that, 25, 30 minutes into a game, having somebody that big lean on you, constantly hitting you, like that just kind of wears on, especially guys smaller than him. But Kylan was actually doing a really good job on the wings of Purdue, on the big guys of Purdue whenever he was switched to him. And that's kind of the cheat code that Illinois has. Kylan was in charge of guarding Cooper Flagg. Kylan was in charge of guarding Danny Wolf against Michigan. And then today he switches to a guy like Braden Smith. And there's not a lot of point guards in the country that a head coach would trust to, like, it doesn't matter your height, doesn't matter your size. Kylan's going to not necessarily shut you down. Of course, Braden Smith, as you said, almost a triple-double. And I just want to be clear, not a triple-double, almost a triple-double. We can thank the announcer for that, I think, because I think with 8 minutes left, they made a point.
Him. He definitely jinxed him.
They're like, Braden Smith with his 10th assist, he's only 1 rebound away with 8 minutes left. And then just it's pretty funny that, he never was able to nab that last rebound. But, for me, I know the offensive firepower is there for this Illinois team. And the only thing I'm wondering about is if the defense can step up. Because earlier in the year, the first half of the season, they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. Then the calendar year hit, everyone got sick. And, I'm not making excuses, but, when people are sick and when people are injured, you don't practice that often. And I think on defense, that hurts more than it hurts on the offensive side. And so you just lose being in sync with some of your teammates and whatnot. And ever since that Duke game, this team's been healthy again. This team's practicing like they've been practicing all season long. And I don't know necessarily if that's just a coincidence on why Illinois is now 3-0 with 3 really impressive wins.
Jason says, JR, the thing I want to know is Illinois going to go up in the power rankings. You bet your bottom dollar they're going to go up in the power rankings now. Jason, listen, I said, like, I totally got the sickness stuff, right? Like, I was one of the people that was saying it with Illinois, right, because, right. I mean, I said last episode, Illinois is a Final Four caliber team. They have that ceiling. Have they shown it all season? No, they've been sick a lot of the season. And so this is something you have to take into account. But I don't power rank teams based off their ceiling. I power rank teams based off of what I've seen from you this season. And what I saw from Illinois was they were not a top 5 team in the Big Ten recently. They've changed that now with the big win at Michigan, this win over Purdue. They're at least top 5 at this point. I mean, they've passed UCLA, they've passed Purdue, like, Maryland, Wisconsin, those teams are up there as well. They've maybe passed, I mean, they've probably passed Michigan at this point too, right? I had them in my top 4, so they've probably passed them. I'll have it for sure on Monday morning with Kent, but I mean, this is an impressive win, not just because Illinois hit threes, but because of what Illinois was able to do on the defensive end, everything you're saying about him. And then Kylan Boswell rebounding as well. 5 rebounds tonight. He was the second leading rebounder for this team. Kasparis Chakonis had 7 rebounds. He was the leading rebounder. Only 3 rebounds tonight for Visic, but he also only played 27 minutes because he was in some foul trouble, so that adds to it. But I mean, there was nobody on this Purdue team that was skying up for rebounds over Kylan Boswell. Some of the rebounds he was going up for and getting in this game, just fantastic to me. Fantastic. All right, Sonny, I do want to turn it around, talk about Purdue just for a second. I know you're mostly Illinois, but I do want to talk Purdue just for a second and kind of get some thoughts there. So this Purdue team lost 4 in a row. Then they won 2 in a row. Now they lose this one at Illinois. We've speculated on some possible, is this team good enough to make it to a Final Four or not? I saw some people saying they were the other day. You tell me if you agree with me or not. I think this Purdue team has Final Four caliber players on it, but I think they also have caliber players on it that are not even NCAA tournament good. I'm not going to name any names, but if you listen to the last episode where Purdue played, you know that I think that about one. Well, I'll just say his name, Cam Heidi. Like he is to me one of the players that is not doing. And I wrote in my notes like, good for him. He recovered. He had that good, what was it, tie up steal type of thing, which could have possibly been called for a foul, but it wasn't against KJ. Then he goes down and he scores on that very next possession, and then he fouls out. The dude ends the game with 2 points. What was it? He ends the game with
2 points,
2 points, 2 rebounds, 5 fouls. He fouls out after 17 minutes. Like, I get Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Coffin-Wren are excellent. Like, these guys are Final Four caliber players, but you have to have more from your other players. Harris gave it to him in this one. Cox gave it to him at points in this game, but you're not getting what you need from Miles Colvin. You're not getting what you need offensively from Caleb Furst. Caleb Furst just catch the ball, right? Like there were at least 2 passes that Braden Smith had to him, which weren't completely on the money, but just went right through Caleb Furst's hands. And I'm like, dude, like you play solid enough defense, that's fine. If you can get some rebounds, that's fine. But at the end of the day, like this Purdue team is not going to be able to get to the Final Four just with those 3, which, by the way, Fletcher Lawyer in this game, 14 points, looks like a pretty good stat line, 6 for 8 from the free throw line. He was pretty much non-existent after about the, final 15 minutes of that game. Whatever Illinois did, getting around the screens, doing a better job of staying with them, whatever they did, they excelled at because Fletcher Lawyer was not nearly as existent. They stopped running stuff for him is really what happened. And he wasn't there. So back to the Final Four caliber thing. Do you think Purdue's Final Four caliber? Yes or no, Sonny?
I don't think so. And I think you kind of nailed on why. I think they got 3 Final Four players, right? But I mean, if we ran this exercise, right, the best player in today's game was Braden Smith. And if we were playing, building our own programs, building our own teams, the first guy you would probably take is Braden Smith. But I would argue 7 of the next 9 are Illinois guys. And, I just think that Matt being so insistent on, not necessarily utilizing the transfer portal like a guy like Brad Underwood will, or, Rick Pitino, like this newer generation is kind of using the transfer portal. I think right now you kind of see the faults of that because Matt was counting on some of these younger players to grow into their roles, and either they aren't capable of doing it, a guy like Heidi, or they're just not ready yet. And unfortunately now they're wasting what looks like could be, a Big Ten Player of the Year season from Braden Smith, 2 potential All-Americans, but it's just they don't have enough support around them. Tonight's a perfect example, right? Braden Smith, almost a triple-double, 18, 12, and 9. TKR, Illinois couldn't stop him. 29 points, 7 rebounds, 2 absolute studs. But they got very little help. And they lost to an Illinois team which had a good all-around game, don't get me wrong, but their best player had 10 points on 3 of 10 shooting. So it's not like, it's just one of those where I think Purdue right now has a ceiling. They've got one of the worst 2-point defenses in the entire country. And I just don't think they're really athletic enough and just talented enough outside the top 2 guys. Yeah, again, Lawyer's a good basketball player. Don't get me wrong. He is a Final Four caliber player. But I think there's just a huge divide in between number 3 and their 4th best player.
Yeah, and sometimes I think just Painter gets away from Lawyer too much sometimes. Like I think sometimes, I'm not trying to disparage Lawyer here and say he only scored 4 points in like the last 15 minutes of the game or something like that, and say that it's his fault. I looked around and I said, you were running so much stuff for Lawyer beforehand, and he was getting open, he was getting to the hoop, and he was drawing fouls. Like he was doing a great job, and then I don't know if it was just Avicic was out of the game and that completely changed things for him or what, but they stopped running stuff to Lawyer, and it was like, you got to get back to that stuff. You can't expect Braden Smith to be Superman all game long. Can Braden Smith be Superman for you? Yes, he can. He absolutely can. He's one of the best players in the country, but you can't put that on him night in and night out. That action they ran from the baseline, it was a super simple screen on Kasparis Jakonas to get Fletcher Lawyer open just enough for him to get that shot off. That was fantastic. Do as much of that as possible, but they didn't do it later on, and I think they suffered for it. So Sonny, my big takeaway from this game, and then we'll move on. I want to see what you think about it. My big takeaway from this game is that Illinois can shoot themselves out of a game, and they can shoot themselves right back into a game. Listen to these numbers. You ready for this? All right, they start the game 3 of 3, which if they lost this game, I would have said that was the worst thing that could have happened to Illinois, was to start the game.
That
3
thought
of 3.
crossed my mind too. Yeah.
From there, Illinois goes 0 for 11 on their next 11 3-pointers, only to be relieved by Will Riley's buzzer beater there at the 3. Their next whatever number, they go 2 for 20. After going 3 for 3, they go 2 for 20. They finally take the lead when they start shooting over 30% from 3. I mean, would you agree with that assessment? Illinois, they shoot themselves out. They shoot them right back into a game. What's your thoughts there?
I mean, 100%, right? Like it's kind of a running joke at this point. You know, we've waited and waited to see, you know, if the season got late enough where Brad Underwood would finally shift his strategy a little bit. But, you know, as I kind of alluded to earlier, you know, Brad has built a certain type of team, and that's the team that he's envisioned. And, you know, despite the struggles today, actually, you know, ultimately they finished, 36.7, am I reading that correctly? So not a bad percentage, but it's those 2 3-pointers at the end from Ben, from Kasparis, where he just trusts his players, right? He doesn't ever tell them to stop. And while that may have led to some headaches earlier in the year, I think it's all building towards March. And, you know, the type of moments that we're going to see 2 weeks from now, well, we got a preview of it tonight.
Yes, you did. Last thing, really fast, and then we'll get out of here. Or we'll get out of here. We'll go to the next segment. Assists tonight for Illinois, 20 assists on 28 made field goals. That's what you love to see as an Illinois fan. It's not just KJ, you know, going around at the top of the key. It's not just Will Riley getting into isolation situations. They did do that at times, and they can do that. But they shared the ball a lot in this game, did a really good job, and it was good stuff. So, all right, everybody. Hey, we are going to hit a commercial really fast. Sonny, you sticking around for the next segment? We're going to talk Big Ten basketball weekend games. You want to stick around?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, we won't take too long. I know we got to get Sonny in bed at some point. All right, so we don't want to make him stay up too long. We'll be right back after this commercial. CBB Analytics isn't just another stat site, it's your ultimate destination for in-depth college basketball analysis used by fans and even the coaches. It has comprehensive stats for men's and women's basketball across Division 1 through 3, dating all the way back to 2018. From shooting percentage to game recap, CBB Analytics has it all. Try CBB Analytics for free or pay for a tier to take your basketball knowledge to the next level. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, please do like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Helps us out. We've started streaming only from our Big Ten Huddle basketball channel, trying to make the other one football only, make this one basketball only, and we want to try to have that distinction. So help us grow the basketball channel as well. We just hit over 150 subscribers on the basketball channel, so we're gonna keep trying to get that up. So help us out there, and we're gonna try to do off-season content with basketball as well. We weren't as good as that last year. We're going to try to keep that going. So, all right, Sonny, we have some Big Ten basketball games this weekend. I just want to point out some that maybe people aren't aware of that are going to affect the seeding, maybe some NCAA tournament stuff. I'll point them out. You kind of react to them with me, and we'll go from there. So, first two we need to point out, Wisconsin and Maryland. They both need to win those games. Those are games they should both win. They're at home. Wisconsin is at home against Penn State. Maryland at home against Northwestern. They are right now both in the top 4 seeds in the Big Ten tournament. However, if they lose, there is an opportunity for Purdue to jump one or both of them and get back into the top 4, and they would then be the 5th seed. So a little bit on the line here. Like I said, Wisconsin and Maryland should win those games. Do you have any concern with them in these games, or maybe a little bit of looking ahead too much? Any thoughts on these two games?
More concerned on Maryland. Now, I'm very high on Maryland. I think they're one of the most complete teams I've seen all season long when it comes to the Big Ten. But this is not really necessarily a spot that they're used to being in, especially over the last couple of years. There's plenty of Kevin Willard jokes, but this team itself is really, really good. And I'm very keen on seeing how they handle the pressure of what, as you said, shouldn't be a very high pressure game. They should be able to soundly take care of the Northwestern Wildcats, but there's a lot at stake. Having just to play 3 games is a lot easier than having to play that extra game on Thursday. So Maryland is the one team I have an eye on because, again, I have them as one of the sleeper contenders for the Final Four out of the Big Ten. I respect them that much, but I want to see them take care of business against a team like Northwestern and make it look like it was business. And just because I want to see if they can mature and grow into this role, because I've never seen them in this position before.
Yeah, and I was looking up while you were talking there. Philip is right. Northwestern, they did beat Maryland earlier this year. Northwestern's been a pretty, they've been one of those teams this year that can kind of be really dangerous and defeat some teams that look much better than them. And, Willard, we've questioned him enough on this channel. I think that he's answered a good amount of those questions this season, at least with putting the roster together. I think that he's figured that out. There's still some stuff in game that I'm like, I don't know. Maybe could have been better there, but overall, Willard has put together at the very least a very good starting lineup. That's my big thing with Maryland. Are they going to be able to make it to the Final Four with pretty much just 5-6 players? Like, it's basically those 5 guys and Jordan Geronimo, if you can get
Illinois is doing the same thing at this point. Illinois is only playing 6-7 guys at this point.
Yeah, but I think they can go deeper if they need to, right? Like, you can play Jake Davis, you can play Ben Hummerkaus. Like, those guys are options too. In fact, sometimes I like the Ben Hummerkaus at the 5 lineup better than I like Ivisic in there, just with the spacing that he provides. So, but at the end of the day, obviously, Ivisic is better. All right, so Philip points the other one out that I was going to bring up next. He says, we're all USC fans tomorrow. Yeah, Illinois fans will be rooting for USC hard. Now, it is at UCLA, so this is another one where it's at the team that needs to win. Looks like a good situation, but Sonny, this is March. We've seen crazier things happen in March for sure. The significance here is that if UCLA loses, this means that Illinois would have not the head-to-head, but they would have there's some kind of wins or whatever. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head. I know that it would make Illinois the 6th seed.
Philip, let us know.
Philip knows. It would make Illinois the 6th seed. Is there any significance here for Illinois to move up from the 7th to the 6th seed, or what are your thoughts here?
No, I've been very open and honest about this on Locked On Illini. It's one of those where Illinois has hit 20 wins now this season. Right? One of the 4 programs in the last 6 years to hit 20 plus wins. So once we got that victory over Purdue, and it's the type of victory I think this team needed to have, not just a comfortable 20 plus point victory, but a grinded out type of game. Right now, the Big Ten tournament, I'm just kind of hoping that we can use the time to rest up, get healthy. Illinois won the Big Ten tournament. I just watched them do it last year. Right now, it doesn't really matter to me. There's certain matchups I'd like to avoid. I don't want to play Maryland. Maryland really matches up really well against Illinois, but I'm not putting too much weight on it. If I know other people are, and that's fine, but me, not so much.
Yeah. John does bring up a good point here because we need to find one. He said, who's the new person we can joke on in the conference since Willard is winning? Yeah, come on. We got to find a new coach here at the Big Ten Huddle that we kind of joke with every now and then. We found our football one, and that is Mike Loxley. It was not intentionally to do that against Maryland, so it just so happens it was both of their coaches. But yeah, we'll have to find a new one there, John. We're taking requests now, so let us know if you have one. Sonny, 2 other ones, and then there's obviously Michigan State. That's a big one for the rivalry and everything else. It doesn't really affect seeding or standings all that much, but it is a big game for at least the rivalry. The other big one, Iowa, Nebraska. Nebraska really needs this win in order to stay in the hunt. If Iowa wins, though, there is the possibility they could make the Big Ten tournament, I believe. I need to run the numbers for that really fast, but Iowa there. And then Ohio State, Indiana. Ohio State just got off that double overtime game against Nebraska where you would say the refs won more than Ohio State in that one if you spend too much time on Twitter, which is fine. The refs did stink in that game, and I said it. But you know what? It is what it is. You got to win the game. Ohio State is traveling to Assembly Hall. Indiana's kind of found themselves here at the end. Ohio State becoming a scrappy team who can shoot really well. Any thoughts on Ohio State, Indiana, and Iowa, Nebraska?
I let me start off with Iowa. This could very well be Fran McCaffrey's last game. So in that sense, it is something to watch. Jared, I don't know if you remember. I think it was the last time I was on this show, the Big Ten Huddle. We talked about, projecting out the rest of the season, and I had actually predicted the Indiana Hoosiers to go on a run at the end of the year and sneaking in, winning the Big Ten tournament and sneaking into the tournament that way. They may not need the Big Ten tournament at this point with the way they've played as of late. They might at this point just be solidly in, but you and I've talked about this before on Locked On Illini, right? It's just one of those where Mike Woodson no longer is catering to what he needs to do to make players happy. All he's trying to do is win basketball games, and go figure, they're winning basketball games. So yeah, I think that's going to be a really good matchup against Ohio State.
It will. It will. I had a Mike Woodson Brad Underwood comparison I was going to make earlier in the show, but I decided not to do it because you're
How
so
can
happy
you?
tonight, and I didn't want to ruin your happiness. So uh, I had it written in my notes. I was like, if
We were
Illinois
doing so
loses
good,
this
JR.
game,
We were doing
huh?
so good.
We were. I do want to correct. I just ran the numbers for it. There's a nice, really awesome site called notnothing.net, and it runs like all the tiebreakers and everything for you. If Iowa wins tomorrow, it doesn't matter what happens with USC. USC is in. Iowa is also in because I forgot Nebraska is at 7-12 right now in the Big Ten. If Nebraska loses, they will not make the Big Ten tournament. Iowa will make it
Wow.
instead because of the head to head and round robin teams that they have faced together. So that game is actually very interesting. Fran McCaffrey could have another game if it does not work out for him. In fact, in the next segment, we're going to talk about three Big Ten coaches that I think are on the hot seat right now, or maybe they're not on the hot seat, but they've been mentioned on the hot seat, and I'm going to give my thoughts on each one. Sonny, any thoughts on Michigan State before we move on to the next segment?
I think Michigan needs this game. They're not going to win the Big Ten conference, obviously, but right now they're just rolling, and not in the good way. I think they need a big win. I think a big win against a rival. Whether the rival has anything to play for, it doesn't matter. I think right now Michigan just needs to remind itself what a victory feels like, because otherwise this may be a really short postseason for the Wolverines.
Yes, and Kent was asking about doesn't Northwestern play a role in that? They are 7-13 now as well. They are, so I think they make the tournament regardless. Yeah, so if they win, they're 8-12. They're in the tournament, but even if they lose to Maryland, yeah, they're above USC, so they're in the tournament regardless. If them, Minnesota, USC, Iowa, and Nebraska would all be 7-13, and it would be Nebraska that is the lowest of those five teams, which is just absolutely insane to think about how much this Big Ten tournament bubble race has become. Nebraska should win that game. Nebraska should win, but Nebraska also should have beat Penn State, and
Yeah.
Nebraska also should have beat Minnesota. Well, they did beat one. Which one did they lose to? They beat Penn State. It was Northwestern. They were down by like 20 against. No, they lost to Penn State. Or they lost to Minnesota. They lost to one of them. Anyway.
I'm just thinking Illinois Purdue right now, JR. I can't help you out right now.
Drew Aller season says, should Mike Rhodes be fired? He's not on my three, and I would say no. I've not really addressed this too much just because of the injuries and stuff this season that Penn State has been through. I do think, I'm not going to knock any Penn State fans if they, think it's been a disappointing season. You started the season beating Purdue, and then, you're now second to last, and the Big Ten looks like you're going to be probably 5-15 if you lose to Wisconsin. You have no hope of making the Big Ten tournament. So I'm not going to be upset or say any Penn State fan is wrong if they want Mike Rhodes gone. But at the same time, I'm also like, they had injuries. Let's see what happens with bringing in his next class. And next year will probably be his prove it year to me. Probably needs to at least make the NCAA tournament or get close and be on the bubble, in my opinion. So
Yeah, I mean, I think I jumped on the post game with you when Penn State beat Purdue. And I sat here for 5 minutes talking about it. I really like Mike Rhodes. And, I really like, they're not there yet, but in just a matter of a couple seasons, I can see how good that they can be a team to be reckoned with. And it didn't quite work out that way.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Casual Big Ten Ken, he says, yikes, Nebraska. I did call that early on, though. Credit to me. If it happens, Ken, we'll see. But it is March. If you ask me, is Nebraska, UCLA, Maryland, and Wisconsin all going to win tomorrow? I'd say they should. But then my counter to that would also be, it's March. So something's gonna happen, and we'll have some time tomorrow to talk about it all after the games are up. We'll be right here after that USC UCLA game. Sonny, I'm gonna hit a commercial really fast. You want to stay on to talk about the hot seat coaches?
Sure, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
All right, let's do it. We'll be right back, everybody. Homefield is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Homefield brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Homefield digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, we have three coaches we're talking about on hot seat-ish. At least their coaching situations are being talked about right now. And those three coaches are Steve Pikiell of Rutgers. Burke and I talked about that a little bit, but I just wanted to expand on it a little bit more tonight. Fran McCaffrey at Iowa and Ben Johnson at Minnesota. One of these I think is valid. The other one I'm kind of like, well, maybe not so much, but I can see why people are there. And then the other one is I am saying, no way, you should not be firing this coach. He's a good coach. You just need to get resources behind him. Sonny, which of the three would you like to start with?
Can we just get that one, the last one, out of the way? Because there's no way Minnesota should be letting go of Ben Johnson. Is that right? Is that the guy?
You are correct.
There's just no way. If they get rid of Ben Johnson, then they deserve everything coming their way. Because the job he's done with that program, where really they're not giving it, like, he had a good team last year and lost everyone just because the program itself is just not investing into the athletics that like they should, especially if you're playing in a conference like the Big Ten. So I think I saw that article. I think it was what Kent, our friend Kent, your friend Kent, Casual Big Ten, tweeted out, talking about how he might be on the hot seat and there's certain donors that want him gone. I think that's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, his buyout is like $3 million. As far as I'm concerned, if you're Minnesota, you're gonna put more resource. Like, I'm not gonna name numbers because I'm not that guy who is gonna be like, insider sources or whatever. Ben Johnson's buyout would be more money than they put into his roster this year. Yeah. You're gonna tell me that Minnesota is gonna be so hypocritical that they're gonna spend more money to buy Ben Johnson out and fire him than they put into his roster? Like, get out of here with that. That is just completely ridiculous. The revenue sharing is coming. $20 million a year. Hopefully he gets that. Well, not all of that, but hopefully he gets a good cut of that for his basketball program. They're going to need to do that. NIL sounds like it's going to increase. I forget what podcast it was that Kent sent me. Didn't send it to Sonny because he didn't like Sonny, but he sent it to me, where they were talking about the donors only want to give to NIL if Ben Johnson is gone. Like, this just screams mismanagement of the Minnesota basketball program to me. And really, I say that not to disparage the fans and say their program stinks or anything. I say it for the fans. It was the same thing Zach and I were saying about Minnesota when we were talking about Corey Heatherman, the defensive coordinator, leaving for Miami because they got outbid. It's like, if you want a good program, you have to put money into it. And if Minnesota wants a good program, you can pay Ben Johnson, and that's fine, but you got to put money behind him on this roster and give him players that are good enough to go and actually win with. Now, Dawson Garcia is good enough. Lakai Patterson has been a welcome surprise, but you went into this season thinking Brennan Rigsby was going to be your starting point guard, and you should have never thought Brennan Rigsby was going to be your starting point guard. He had an excellent game at the end there against who was that? Whoever it was at the end there when he scored like 20 points and won the game. It was some big upset game. I forget who they beat. But he had a big game there at the end, but he's not shown that all season long. So there's just mismanagement right now of the Minnesota basketball program. And Ben Johnson, being the guy that he is, he's sticking around. He's trying to make something happen. He loves his players. He loves the program. the worst thing in the world for Minnesota would be to fire Ben Johnson. He goes someplace else and he wins, because it probably would happen. He'd probably go to some mid-major program in the Mountain West and start winning, and it's like, oh, look, he's gone.
I was just going to say that. I think if Minnesota fired Ben Johnson, if he wanted to, he would have another job in a week. It wouldn't be one of those where a certain coach had a disaster of a performance and they have to take a year off or 2 years off and interview for other jobs. I think the job Ben has done with Minnesota, considering the circumstances, is it's fantastic. And I don't think he would have to wait long at all to get another job.
Yeah, people would recognize it. Drew Season says you should make a video sometime ranking each Big Ten team by how much NIL resources they have. It would have to be sport specific, because certain sports spend certain like amounts on NIL and stuff like that. Like if I talked about Purdue basketball NIL, like that's gonna not nearly be the same as Purdue football type of stuff. So, it is what it is. But I'll try to put something together like that. Probably gonna be after the NCAA tournament and stuff like that. But I'll try to at least do tiers or something like that. I don't know if I want to get into exact rankings, but maybe tiers or something like that. All right, Sonny, the other one, Fran or Steve, which one do you want to talk about?
Let's go with Steve.
Okay, so Steve Pikiell, he entering this season. Entering the season, his seat was very cold, right? He brings in Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper. People are happy with it. I was kind of questioning it. I wasn't ready to say that he'd be like, one of the worst teams in the league, like some people were saying, because I just felt like there was too much talent with the lottery picks. You lose to Kennesaw State in the non-conference. The Big Ten has not gone the way you thought it would. I mean, you did have some really good games in the Big Ten, but also you had some stinkers that you lost to teams you shouldn't have. So, I mean, it's been kind of up and down for Rutgers. Rutgers fans had a lot of expectations for this team. 2 lottery picks on it. You would have thought at least NCAA tournament. But that's just not the world of college basketball we live in anymore. Now, Steve Pikiell will not be fired. Currently, they are still searching for an AD. Their president plans to step down in July. So you are not going to find this Rutgers program where like Greg Schiano is the most powerful man, at Rutgers right now.
Yeah.
Because if you lose Steve Pikiell, you're losing the president, you're losing the athletic director. You can't do that. So Steve Pikiell is not going anywhere. But I don't think it's a completely like asinine conversation to say they should move on from Steve Pikiell. There are thought processes of the game has passed him by, right? Now, people were saying that about Tom Izzo last year. Look what he's done this season. But still, Steve Pikiell's not shown what Tom Izzo has shown in his career. So, but the thought process is it's probably more likely that Steve Pikiell would step down rather than Steve Pikiell be fired, just because he does run such a developmental program. Teams are going to come in and try to poach his players if they don't have the NIL resources to keep them. And at the same time, like he's not somebody that's going to want to go into the transfer portal and try to get all these new players, and because that's just not the brand of basketball that Steve Pikiell plays, and that's not this current situation, this current system doesn't fit him super well, but they can't move on from him this offseason. What are your thoughts, Sonny?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Pikiell. He was one of I think we had a head coach ranking, power rankings, and I always consistently had him in my top 8-ish, right? Like I always thought he did a good job with the talent that he had. This year, though, I mean, you're talking about
he's failed this year. He's failed.
No doubt about it. So in that regard, if the conversation turns to, hey, if you have 2 literally lottery picks, not just lottery picks, top 5 draft picks, and you can't win with that, then Rutgers just has to figure out what they want to be, because they've got the NIL that we talked about before. They're in a hotbed of basketball, talent. And, if Steve Pikiell's not the guy, like you said, maybe at this point, he better serves at a program like a Minnesota. Just that doesn't necessarily have the high aspirations. They don't really plan on winning the Big Ten Conference. They just want to make the Big Ten tournament. They want to finish 500 in the Big Ten Conference, get to play a couple extra games, and they'd be content with that. Because again, when you have 2 lottery picks, your intentions have to be higher. Your aspirations have to be higher. And this is just a failure of a season.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what went on at Indiana this year, which is they spent so much NIL on their roster, and Mike Woodson has gotten this team to be a bubble team, which things have looked good here recently. They beat Purdue, and the team's looking better. But at the end of the day, like Indiana fans remember how much money was spent on this team. And if you're going to spend that much money on NIL, which isn't necessarily all Indiana fans' money, but still, if you're going to spend that many resources into the program just to be a bubble team every year, like you have to move on from that. And I think Rutgers fans are going through some similar thought processes here with Steve Pikiell, which I think are warranted, but at the same time, like just looking from the outside, looking in, like Steve Pikiell, he's more likely to step down than he is to be fired, just with everything going on in that program the way it is. All right, Sonny. Fran McCaffrey did a video on him at one point, so this is probably going to be more thoughts from you. He has brought Iowa to heights that other coaches have not. Iowa's not been, known to be this program that does amazing things in the NCAA tournament and stuff, but he's also not got out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. He's had NBA talent on his roster. He's done a good job of putting teams together. He just has not done a great job of actually excelling with it when it matters most. So I get Iowa fans being upset. I do think that they probably need to, think about who they're going to get next. I don't think they had the thought process if we're going to get somebody. And I think that's a little dangerous. But at the same time, like Fran's getting up there. He lost his sons, not being at his program anymore. It doesn't look great for him. I think it's probably time for Iowa to move on, or at the very least have him step down and retire. What are your thoughts here, Sonny?
I would definitely convince him to retire. I just think it would look bad firing the guy. The thing is, moving forward, the Big Ten Conference, we have such a leg up on all the other conferences and just the amount of money that's coming in. And, Iowa, I remember, when Brad Underwood kind of turned things around at Illinois, it was Iowa that Brad Underwood was going up against. You're talking about Garza and Kofi, those battles. And, Iowa was winning the Big Ten Conference. And as you said, they just didn't have the postseason success that you would kind of hope for with teams that good. But it's one of those where, Fran's teams are always fun to watch. They certainly are. But more so than Pikiell, more so than the other guys, I can see that maybe it's just time to try something different because of Iowa's recent, basketball successes. It gives you a taste of what they're capable of doing. And now they have the resources to move forward and find an upgrade. I think it's just like, hey, aren't you getting a little old? Maybe it's time to, go to your cabin in Vancouver or whatever it is and just relax with all the money that you've made and, maybe be the face of the program in the sense, for the NIL events and, mingle with the donors and whatnot. But let's maybe give it to a new guy. Ben Johnson should go to Iowa.
He might do pretty well there.
Yeah.
I think they're probably looking at another Ben. I think they're probably looking at Ben McCollum a little bit from Drake, which I don't think would be a bad hire. I think that would be good for them. I think DeVries would be better from West Virginia. Personally, I think he's just more seasoned and has been at a higher level for a year, so that might be better for him. But either way, and I said this in my thing too. Like this is hard to say too much on because I don't know Fran McCaffrey personally, but this will be the last thought, and then we'll get out of here, Sonny. He just doesn't seem happy. Like Fran McCaffrey, he was always so, just had so much emotion and everything. And it wasn't necessarily always happy emotion. I mean, we think about the stare down. We think of him like getting in referees' faces, just completely screaming out of his mind. Like you saw that emotion out of him. You don't see it this season from him as much. He's very subdued, doesn't really seem to be, into the games as much. I don't want to say that's probably the wrong wording. That makes it sound like he's like checked out. He's not checked out. His team is still playing really hard. And he's still very passionate about his players and stuff like that. But that's another thing I've noticed in some of his post games and, after the game stuff is like just how much he is talking about how much he cares about this team. And it almost feels like to me, like this is kind of like the last ride, like really care about these guys. I want to do well for him. And he kind of knows that it's kind of time to move on. And you know what? All his sons are in the same place. They're all over in Indiana. Just move to Indiana and go be with your sons, man. Like I promise you'll be much happier watching your son coach at I think he's coaching at Butler. And you know what? You get to go see Caitlin Clark on the weekends play for the what's that WNBA team? You get to go see her play, the
Fever.
Fever. You'll have a good time with that. She's pretty good at basketball, I hear.
The sad thing is though, like, Fran with the career he's had, like with Owen Freeman going down, he really didn't stand much of a chance because that the roster itself, losing what was clearly their best player. It's not really a surprise what their record is now. Now, of course, some of that could be Fran McCaffrey's fault. Don't get me wrong, but when you see a guy who's just won so many games over his tenure at Iowa have to get pushed out over a season like this, it just feels so anticlimactic because once Owen went down, I don't really think Iowa really had much of a chance.
Yeah, no, I agree. John, I did forget to bring this up. Thank you. He said, didn't Fran say himself he was coming back to Iowa next year? It was something like, I'm not done yet. I still got some in me or something like that. So led people to believe that. I wasn't saying that Fran does think that way, that this is his last hurrah. I was mainly saying that I think he should kind of feel that way, where it's like, you had a good career at Iowa. Don't do the thing where you have another season and the fans start to revolt against you and then they come to the games and they're chanting like fire him, stuff like that. Like Mike Woodson went through that at Indiana. Like you don't want to do that. Just, go off into the, maybe not into the sunset because people do want him gone, but just move on. You did a good job at Iowa. You did good things for the program. You had a lot of good NBA talent. Just move on, go be with your sons, and enjoy that time there. That would be my advice to Fran if I knew him personally. I do not, but if I did know him personally, that would be my advice. So, all right, Sonny, any more thoughts on these hot seat situations before we get out of here?
No, not so much. I think you got the names right. Obviously, Mike Woodson's gone, so that's not something to worry about. Rhodes probably has one more year before we really have to be concerned. But Ben Johnson absolutely should not be on this list.
Yeah, yep. And that was mainly one of the reasons why I put him on the list, was to say, don't have him on your hot seat list. So. All right, everybody. Hey, remember to check out CB Analytics, HUDDLE code Huddle. Get you $30 off. We appreciate everybody being here. Sonny, tell people about Locked On Illini real fast where they can go find you at.
Yeah, as JR said, it's Locked On Illini, as that hat says. I'm producing Illini content each and every day. There's a lot of familiar faces in this chat tonight. I appreciate you guys tagging along. But yeah, Locked On Illini. Find me at the Sunny V if you want to banter back and forth on all the social medias. But yeah, if you're a fan of the Illini, definitely Locked On Illini. I've produced new content every single day of this calendar year so far, and I keep churning. And you'll see JR pretty much every Monday of the week. We talk about various topics. So join us there.
Yep. Either Monday or Tuesday. It really kind of seems to turn out to be. So I'm sure we'll be talking about power rankings this Monday. That might be a topic of discussion for the Illini after the last few games that they've won. So we appreciate everybody being here. Going to be live tomorrow night talking about the USC UCLA game to start, and then all the other games. I mean, some of these games look straightforward, but it's March. It's going to be crazy. Going to be going live Sunday night at 8 o'clock as well, talking about the Big Ten tournament and everything going on there. The seeds will be set. We'll be able to kind of do some picks a little bit. And then Monday, Jason Carmelo, Big Ten bracketology, figure out if your team is in or not, or where their seeding might be, give you a range there. And then when the Big Ten tournament starts, we will go live every single night after the final Big Ten tournament game, talk about the games that happen, preview the games that are to come. It'll be a great time. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Thank you for being here at the Big Ten Huddle. Like, subscribe,